Hi, welcome to One Voice Evolving. Today we have Anna Rollins, author of Famished on Food, Sex, and Growing Up as a Good Girl. And we've invited her because we want to explore the fundamentalist thinking on the right and the left, diet culture and faith, and how that intersects to healing and recovery in real world, in real life, in real time. Please welcome Anna. We're so happy to have her. And Anna, I found you over on Substack, my new favorite hangout place, when I saw your book. Tell us about your book.
Yeah,
And and I'm fascinated because I've deconstructed some religion, I've deconstructed some whiteness, and I've certainly deconstructed diet mentality, which took years, way harder than deconstructing my religion was, because
yeah,
it was more deeply ingrained, I think.
absolutely.
So
Yeah,
tell us about what you do and tell us why.
yeah. I'm the author of Famished on Food, Sex, and Growing Up as a Good Girl. And it's a reported memoir that examines the rhyming scripts of evangelical purity culture and diet culture. And it looks at how those scripts kind of lay over top of each other, telling women that they need to stay small in order to be safe, good, approved by God if you're in the church. And the book deconstructs those cultures. I grew up in the 90s, and both of those were kind of at its height in the 90s. I grew up during Kate Moss's Nothing Tastes as Good as Skinny Feels. And
Oh,
evangelical purity culture was kind of this, not just a religious force, but a political force because we were responding to the AIDS crisis. And so, like, the abstinence only movement was something that was being pushed in public schools, and because it was kind of this fear response to sex, because at that time sex was perceived as something that could lead to disease or even death. And so I'm unpacking my coming of age. I'm looking at the ways the residue of that like kind of filtered into my adult life. And I'm someone who's still in the church, but I've deconstructed a lot of the prosperity gospel and the white supremacy and the hyper individualism, like those things that have crept into the church and in larger culture. But the book is kind of like looking at all of that, and I'm trying to see how I can still have faith in the midst of those kind of toxic belief systems that I inherited.
I had to deconstruct from that, and I finally came to the land of saying, I'm done with the church, but not done with God.
Yeah.
That was where my balance was. Have you always been a writer? Has that been your expression? Because women are doing this on the daily at every age group, but not everybody is out there telling people about it.
Yeah, I always have been a writer. Like I mean, I remember saying in my fifth grade class, like I read Beatrix Potter and I was like, I want to do that someday. I want to tell stories. Like I think I read the biography of how she became a writer. And when I was a teenager, during my free time, I made websites and I wrote an e-zine that I would send out. It was like an electronic magazine over email. And this was like at the beginning of the internet. And I collected my parents' friends' email addresses somehow, like my parents' friends from church, and I would send them my e-zine, and it was called It's a Girl Thing. So I like forced my writing upon these
Oh,
adults as a 12-year-old. And I majored in creative writing, and then I got my master's in applied linguistics, and I taught writing in higher education for almost 15 years. And so writing has always been part of my life. I paused publishing my own creative work for a long time. I just focused on teaching, and I published academic work. But there was about 15, once I got out of grad school, about 15 years where um, I felt almost blocked. Like, and I knew I had things to say, but I didn't know how to say it. And so I really focused my energy on helping other people just like learn the craft of writing. And then after I became a mom, that's whenever I became unblocked, I guess. I I I felt this urgency to say what I wanted to say and not just help other people learn how to write too.
Right. And so when you found your voice and you started expressing again, because I've been blocked, I called that I felt like I was blocked for 20 years after a divorce
Mm.
once, right? Because I had a lot of cultural conditioning in the church,
Mhm.
and I was in ministry about A, being a woman in ministry to begin with, and B, to being divorced in the church. And I had compound loss with that, in that divorce process, right? Because you
Yeah.
lose your family, your home, your relationship with who you thought your friends were. There's always collateral damage. But in that deconstruction phase, how does your how is your experience of famished? Did you have an eating disorder or disordered eating? Because there's a difference.
Yeah, yeah, I never received a clinical diagnosis. It was always, just functional enough for no one to really be too concerned, but for it to be a huge a huge impediment in my life. And
Mhm.
I talk about that a lot in Famished, about how like I would receive praise for this thing that was really consuming me. And like the what was going on in my mind was not visible to people. Like what people saw was probably health. Like she's very, very healthy. But if they were to have access, and I think in Famished I give people access, if they were to have like insight into just the degree of the obsession and the ways I limited myself in my future. I mean, I made all sorts of decisions to not do things that I desired in order to accommodate like my food and exercise compulsions and rituals. I try to like show how even something subclinical can be so damaging. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And when I discovered the difference between an eating disorder and disordered eating is when I was going for therapy and they gave me a diagnosis
Mhm.
so the insurance would pay for it. And the diagnosis was bulimia. Trust me,
Mhm.
I have never voluntarily thrown up in my life.
Yeah.
Okay. So I learned some things about the system back then and the way labels follow you through your medical history.
That
Uh,
is interesting. Did they classify it that way because you purged through exercise? Is that
no, I
no?
wasn't purging at all. I was compulsively eating and binge eating,
Yeah,
but they didn't have binge eating disorder back then. They
mm,
had bulimia, so that was what they did so they could get paid. And I didn't care as long as insurance was paying it.
sure.
So that whole system, as I've become older and more seasoned in the system, uh, and found my voice, I'm not afraid to talk about those things and to expose them so other people can see. When you wrote your book, Famished, it sounds like you mm, took the guardrails off and let people see behind the curtain of the committee. I call it the itty bitty shitty committee in there. And
Yeah, yeah. You're just
the things everybody knows and nobody's talking about because any woman who has ever, I was dieting from the age of 8, which dieting really, the diet culture, the industry, the multi-billion dollar industry really cements those things in just as much as Sunday school does.
oh yeah. I mean, it's the water we swim in. There's not even I think a lot of people don't even question that I mean, I think that people will question the more extreme versions of dieting, but like even just this idea that we have to get back on track after the holidays, like somehow having fun is something we need to like get ourselves back. Like, I mean, that's just so much part of our culture. And it's rooted in some ways in religious thought. Like, like diet culture has religious origins. Like you can kind of see the rise of the Protestant work ethic with like movements and diets, and there are people who have done really good work, like kind of tracing how they like arose at the same time. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so in your book and in your journey of being an author and on Substack, how is that evolving for you in real time? Is it giving you more audience? Because I certainly didn't know you existed, but I'm so grateful you came for this.
Yeah, I feel like I've gotten to meet some really exciting people. Like I so I worked in academia for almost 15 years. And then it was right after I'd finished the first draft of my book. I hired a developmental editor, and she said, "You need to publish in popular outlets if you want to get this thing published." And so I started taking classes, learning how to pitch popular outlets, because that was something I wasn't used to. I was used to like peer review. And so I published my first piece in HuffPost. And then, like, once I started, I just almost couldn't stop. It was like I just wanted to, I was excited to write. And also, I really wanted to get my book out there. So I published about 50 essays in popular outlets within 2 years. And then around that time, I developed my Substack, which like combines my expertise in teaching writing. But I'm like teaching people how to break into the popular market. And so I'm kind of telling my stories that I tell in the popular outlets, but like I'm like trying to give people strategies for trying to break in. And then with this book coming out, I feel like I've met so many new people, just because other more seasoned writers have been really generous and have invited me onto their platforms to have conversations, and then I meet new readers. So it's been really exciting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, good, good. So what do you want people to know about your journey or the intersection of purity culture and diet culture?
Yeah, I think that I mean, first and foremost, I when I wrote the first draft, I wrote the book for me. It was like I was trying to figure out problems in my life. I was trying to figure out, can I s- did did my belief systems cause these problems that I have in my life? I like detail, I struggled with disordered eating. I talk about the effects that purity culture had on me and my marriage. And so I'm trying to unpack all of that. And I don't know the answer. Like when I was writing the book, I was focused on writing scenes from my past, and I didn't want to interpret the scenes necessarily. I just wanted to like this is what happened. What do we think of this? I remember even handing like my writing over to other writer friends, and they would say like, you like tell these stories but you never tell us what you think of what happened. And I'm like, well, that's partially because that's what I prefer to read. I prefer for people to not preach at me, but also that's because like I don't know what I think of all of this. Like I want to figure that out. And so I was writing to sort of see if I could still believe what I had always said I believed. And the conclusion I come to at the end is that I do still believe many of the things that I grew up with, but there were things that I had to parse out. I was figuring out what I could keep and what I needed to throw away. Um, and so I did that for myself. But then you revise and you're thinking about an audience. And I know that in the church, like women are leaving the church in record numbers. I mean, like Pew just put out a research study that said, like, this is the highest number of women who have exited the evangelical church in decades. So I know a lot of women are feeling very frustrated, very hurt by the church. And that's how I felt too. Um, And I don't expect every reader who comes to my book to come to the same conclusions as me. I'm really not interested in preaching. I don't like I'm writing about the church, but I don't love preaching. I don't like people telling me what to think. I like good stories. Like I love literature. I want people to like take me into another world. I want to get lost.
Mhm.
And that I love how when that changes me and when the writer is not trying to control how I am changed. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I think I want to invite people into my world. I had it was a very common like I grew up evangelical, but I grew up in Appalachia, so it was kind of a unique subculture. I want to invite people into my world and I just want them to like be lost in a story. Yeah.
And find their way. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And so, do you do any coaching or anything now that you are on the other side of the book? And
I'm
what does that look like?
I'm building out my so my Substack is free right now, but I'm going to add some tiers that involve coaching because I love teaching writing. I'm really passionate about helping people learn how to get their work into the world, not just like it be this personal thing, but if they want to get it published, I'm very passionate about that. So I don't have my coaching program completely set up, but I'm building that out now.
There. Okay. All right. So what we do at One Voice Evolving is that we in 2026 have discovered that there is a circle of women. I didn't know that detail about leaving the church, but it makes perfect sense because there's a sense of being disenfranchised.
Mm,
And and what we so clearly see is particularly in the realm of equal rights is being stripped away under the authority of many of the people we've gone to church with, or that we live with, or that we parent with. And so it creates a real moment of faith crisis for women of who they were intended to be and how culture is trying to mold them or
yeah.
put them in their place or keep them small. And the same thread in our spirit that rebels against diet culture over time after you've tried everything you can to be the good wife, the good girl, the perfect this, the whatever, and you hit midlife, which is why I like to work with women over 40, where the rules are still the same, but you've changed.
Mhm.
And
We,
that's hormonal, and that's by design, by God's design, and there's no going back from that.
yeah.
There's no putting yourself back in that little box anymore. And so we just started a circle of voices evolving the Cove, where we're taking those women over 40 who are disenchanted, and saying, look, come in and rest.
Mhm.
Do triage. Come and sit around the fire and sort your thoughts. I'm just like you. And maybe it's the introverted writer in us. I'm
Yeah.
not, I don't want to tell people how to think, how to be, or where to land politically, but I really do want them to find enough breathing space to listen to that still small voice inside and let that be their guide.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have very many places, particularly in this rapid change environment of 2026, where women can can put down their safeguards to even be seen. When you do things like this in a book where you're just telling your story, but you did it for yourself and it happened to be, then the spirit moved you to let other people see. That's
Mhm.
the best healing in the world for
Mhm.
you and for them.
Yeah. I mean, in my darkest moments, I turn to people's personal stories.
Mhm.
I don't like self-help, like pull yourself up, but like that's not what I turn to. I
Oh,
remember oh when I was struggling with infertility, I would read like those personal narratives. Like I love a good writer who understands their craft, who just can make me feel less alone through their wonderful storytelling. That's what I'm drawn to. When I
Right.
was dealing with depression during one of my pregnancies, I would just read personal essays online. Like after I had one child, after I'd get my child to bed, I would just read personal essays. I didn't even want them. I would sometimes get mad at them when they would tell me what I should do next. Like
Yes.
I just wanted to read what they were experiencing because it made me feel less alone. Um,
Right.
so that's
Right.
what I am trying to do on the page too.
Let us learn from your lived experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what was the most challenging part of sorting all of that out in your mind? And how old were you when you started that process?
Well, I've been writing about these topics for as long as I can remember. Like in creative writing classes in college, I would write about food, God, my body, and then I would get embarrassed. I would think I can't turn this in to my workshop. So then I would put it aside and turn something else in. So I've been writing about it privately for, I mean, I'm almost 40. I'm not quite 40. So for, like a, a decade and a half. I got really serious about writing the book during the pandemic. I had just given birth to my second child.
Mhm.
So I would have been, how old was I? Early 30s,
Mhm.
30-ish. Yeah. Um, and there was something about it had been a traumatic postpartum experience. And I was working from home. I was teaching online. My husband was an essential worker. I had a toddler and a baby. I
Mhm.
had no time,
All
but
right.
I had to tell this story. It was like I just did it in any moment I could find. Like something, it was like something cracked in me. I don't know. It was like I knew that I couldn't make my next move until I got this story out of me.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I think the isolation of the pandemic made me feel, almost like I had this moment where I realized I was like, why are you afraid of like telling these things that you care about? Like we could all die here in a second. Like I felt my mortality, that
Yeah.
combined with like the traumatic postpartum experience. I think um that like because I'm a very risk averse person, or I had been up until that point, and I was very private and introverted and like I mean, when I published my first personal essay that like kind of told on myself a little bit, people around me were shocked. Um, so it was very counter to my personality, but there was something about that environment in the pandemic where I felt death and like
Mhm.
and isolation. I also thought like maybe I'll never see anyone ever again. Um,
All
so
right.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think the pandemic, we're not going to know for really a long time what all came of it. But I'm an introvert and I'm a writer. It was an introvert's dream. You
Yeah.
mean I don't have to go to a restaurant and smile? You mean I don't have to, there was no get to, I wasn't frustrated not to go to a football game. I'm good. So it was pretty wonderful. But the same thing happened once I had enough solitude that I didn't have to suit up to show up anywhere. And I
Mhm.
could hear what was behind the noise, the head noise in my brain. Then I felt, and I think a lot of women did, which is what shifted during the pandemic, a real urgency to express. Where
Yeah.
before I could go in a room full of people and everybody was so busy expressing and it was all small talk anyway. I'm just check out in my own little brain and, mark time till it's time to go. Shifted all of that because I found out I like my company. I do have something to say, and people are helped by that. And
Yeah.
that, my religious upbringing or spiritual understanding of you be the hands, you be the feet. Okay, wherever you are, whatever little piece it is, if you feel that inner urgency, basically you have 6 seconds to act on it or it'll pass. So you don't have to act on it. If the spirit prompts you, you don't have to do anything with it, but because somebody else will. But But to allow that to move you changes who you are because it takes the focus off of what they think you should be into something really authentic.
I had this moment in the pandemic where I kind of knew that some of the things I was saying I might get critiqued by certain people in charge in the church.
Yeah.
And like a Bible verse came to mind, and it was about the fear of man. And I was like, I'm not supposed to be afraid of men. Like, and that was not how that verse was used when I was a child. Of course I was supposed to be afraid of those men, but like, it was wild how I would remember the verses that I memorized as a child, and they would give me this kind of strength to keep like going and telling my story. Like, and even there was the verse about not throwing your pearls before swine. Like when I worried too much about like getting permission from certain people, I was like, well, I don't throw my pearls before swine. It was like, and I don't think that I was, it's interesting how the word of God kind of rises above
Yes.
the power structures in this world. So yeah, but I remember thinking like, I'm not supposed to fear men. Like
Mhm.
that, I remember memorizing verses in Awana. Like, yeah, like they would come to me, and sometimes that would like give me the courage to keep telling my story. Yeah. Yeah.
And so when they've raised us to follow scripture, and then we become these adult women who notice they're not following scripture the way they taught us to, that deconstruction, when I had to do it, was I had to be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I didn't want to walk away from all of it because some of it was core to my life and my joy and my understanding of God. And some of it was disinformation, misinformation, misapplication. And
Mm.
I had to be fully present in my body to be able to begin to sort those things out. What was the bill of goods I was sold versus what are the values I hold going forward, right?
That's I mean, and that's so hard, right? Like,
Oh,
yeah, I feel very much, I mean, growing up, I was taught, like, I remember writing a paper my senior year. I went to a private Christian school, and I had to write a This I Believe paper. And it
yeah.
was like the core tenets of Christianity. And there were right or wrong answers. Like, my grade was determined upon like whether or not I adhered to Baptist theology. Like,
Oh, yeah.
but so I learned very specifically what I believed, but I have found now that like I am always pausing when someone asks me what I believe about something, and I'm like going through each of the arguments. Like I have to really think through what I believe about little things. And like there are very core things that I do believe, but a lot of the side stuff, I'm still sorting through it. Um, even though I had the answers 20 years ago.
Oh, and that is the thing. We think at 20 and 30 we have all the answers. At 40, the questions change.
Yeah,
And then you have to find your own answers.
yeah.
You and your higher power, whatever that is. Yeah.
Or you have to be okay with just living the question and not having the answer. Like, I don't have to know everything. I mean, actually, I think that's a sign that, like, I'm not God. I don't know everything. I have these values that I want to live into, but I don't have to have an answer for everything.
I was a late in life student. I raised my children, got married, raised my children, and then went back to school after I put all of them into college. Then it was my turn, and I went back. And the first one I went to was a fundamental Moody Bible Institute satellite, right? And there I am with all these 18, 19-year-old folks, and I was 40. And I did a paper for my theology class, a what you believe kind of paper. And it was comparative religions. And what they wanted me to do, and I don't ever do what you expect from me. What they wanted me to do was tell them why Christianity was the superlative rational choice among all of these world's religions. And what I came away with from my study and research and understanding was I am a Christian because of the country I was born into. Because if I had been born into a different country, I'd be a hell of a Muslim. I'd be a devout something else because I'm wired. We all are wired for worship. We are wired for connection. We are wired for that. So my belief system has nothing to do with one way, the right way, my way. It has everything to do with all of that conditioning. I got a C minus on that paper because I didn't check their boxes. And at the end, by the end of semester, I wanted to take a class for Christian counseling. I already was a licensed Christian counselor in the state I was in. I wanted to take a class to learn a little bit more about it, and they denied me the class because I was a woman, and the class was in the pastor track. Now, at Dallas Theological Seminary, women could teach the pastor track, but they couldn't take the pastor track, and that was in the late 90s. And I challenged that in the same person's class in front of all these 18-year-old wannabes. And I said, I hope the young women here know that education is being denied to them. And he's like, oh, I don't think they do that. And I pulled out their little handbook, page 7. Here it says, let me read it to you. Here's the receipt, because that's just, and I stepped away from that and went into a different educational institution to finish my degrees.
I bet some of the women in that room who were younger and too scared to speak up, I bet they were so grateful for you. Or like even if they weren't grateful for you in that moment, I bet years later they were.
That's what you hope. When I use my voice, I drop, people call them now Kimisms, these little nuggets along the way. The Bible says those are seeds. You're planting seeds, and you don't know what ground it's going to land on, and you don't know what's going to happen. And so you drop your seeds and you trust the process.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like our writing and our Substack and our communities are doing now.
And isn't that biblical too?
Yes.
Like all of these things are rooted in, I mean,
Yeah.
that's in scripture too. Yeah. Yeah. It's just the way you were taught to interpret was not that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. The narrow understanding to fit in. I would say that's it. Because that fitting in runs with the belief systems of your family, of your culture, of the educational system, of the government, of our bodies. It is the same narrow definition. Be still, be quiet, and don't make waves.
Yeah.
Don't say what you see
Yeah.
to stay
Absolutely.
safe. And that's not where we are in 2026 because being nice doesn't save you.
No, it doesn't. I
I
mean,
thought it would.
and that's kind of what and I think that, so I interviewed a number of women, dozens of women for this book.
Okay.
And what I found was when women were healing their relationships with their own bodies, their relationship to religion was intricately involved. And a lot of times they realized that something had to change because they had played by the rules, they had stayed quiet, they'd been passive, and they thought that, like, by doing that, things would work out. And something happened in their life where the opposite happened. Like their life was derailed because they had played by the rules. Um, it was all, I mean, it's always a different story, but it was, it followed that kind of that narrative arc. And
Mhm.
in that moment, that was when things erupted. They had to figure out why they'd suppressed their desires for so long and how that affected what they believed about God.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can't come back into your body by deconstructing that without coming back to the core, which is God. So of course they're going to be intertwined. I did a year to clear what's holding you back when I was clearing my space. It was a space clearing because I was a little bit of a clutterer. And I thought that was just about the clutter, and I was wrong because it turned out everything was an expression of some inner something. And so when I cleared the clutter a year, I did a year of that and got everything organized and everything out that didn't serve and all of that. Then it was like, so where else in my life am I limited? Am I stuck by too much stuff? And the lens turned to my marriage
Mm.
because I was playing small, playing safe, settling, going along to get along, instead of saying, "Oh, that doesn't work for me anymore." No, it brought me joy once, but it doesn't bring me joy now. What do we do with that? And all of those thou shalt nots that had nothing to do with salvation issues and everything to do with the comfort zone of other men came bubbling to the surface to clear.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And it really, I mean, you do start examining every part of your life when you're going through,
Mhm.
um, I mean, because you're unpacking these narratives that made you feel safe, like that made
At
you
one time.
did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and you see, when you see how it might not actually be protecting you, it might be hurting you,
Yeah.
um, then you re-examine
Right.
all the things. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And not unlike our current social structure, and nobody's coming to save you. So the white knight, the prince, the whatever, it's like, I my internal life, which is very rich and I like my company, is the well. This is the wellspring. And if I stop it right here, then for me, that's quenching the spirit.
And when you said, I remember having this moment where I realized no one was coming to save me. And for a while I thought, and so I have to be able to save myself.
Yeah.
Then I hit my own limits. Like I experienced burnout and my body betrayed me. Like I got really sick and
Mhm.
I experienced like structural limits in work and then, so then I had to even deconstruct that sort of like, no one's coming to save me. I have to save myself. And yet I am also this limited human being who hates her dependency, but is still dependent in some ways. And so that's kind of like, it's almost like you're always deconstructing something, you know? You see the flaw, you move to a new narrative, you see the flaw in that narrative, and that might be book two for me. I don't know.
Right?
Yeah.
It's evolving. Yes. You meet people where they are. I do coaching. I've done executive coaching for highly functioning addicts and alcoholics for 30 or more years. And you meet people where they are. If they think drinking is the problem, then that's the place we start. It never stops there. Your healing never stops when you put down the drug or the drink, because that was just a symptom. Okay? It doesn't solve your problem to change partners, because that's just the symptom. Who you are, it goes deeper than that.
Yeah.
And so as people peel a layer and go, okay, well, I don't stop drinking, but I'm still pissed all the time. Now we can peel that layer and what's under there and what's under there and more of their light every time. When they have an aha moment, I don't know if you've experienced this, they their countenance changes.
Yeah.
You can see the spark in their eye. They
Yeah.
light up. And so the question that I guide my life with at this age is what lights me up? Do more of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of that.
That kind of like inner wisdom. Because a
Mm,
lot of times your body will tell you like in a way that your brain is often following these scripts, these conditions, but I mean, and I noticed that in my parenting too. I have elementary school age kids and I have a toddler too. And a lot of times, like if I do what I feel like I should do, that's not always right. But a lot of times, like if I do what there's like this inner knowing. And if I can listen to that, it's better for everyone. So hard to teach that. I'm not sure it can be. I think you can just make space for it. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it is. And we are so, all of the conditioning we've had disconnects us from our body. The one thing, the thread that I see through religion and through diet and through social conditioning and education, it all overvalues this and undervalues this.
It's
And
very,
we are out of balance.
it's very dualistic. And
Yes. Yeah.
um, I write
Be
about it.
like a man.
Yeah. Well, we think
And
of the body as this feminine thing. I mean, because women, like, we create life with our bodies. Like, our power in many ways is like our body. And that has been used against us because we've been objectified and sexualized in ways against our will. But also, like, our bodies are very powerful. We create life, we nourish life. And I think that we have been taught to fear that power. And that's why the body has been kind of deemed uh sinful or base, or like it's been conflated with the flesh, like um when the body is like it's something to listen to just as much as our mind.
right.
Yeah.
And when we're listening to that, we're not listening to the noise voices that are telling us how to shut it down, which makes them very angry and reactive and more controlling, right, over our bodies. So, how would you help our audience and women begin to understand that it's safe here
Hmm.
and how to explore or to reconnect here? I do it. I mean, I do it sometimes through a simple breath, but sometimes, like in the first week of 2026, box breathing in and cutting it. That's not even coming close, you know? I'm carrying anxiety that's not mine to carry. Or is it?
Yeah.
Because it is the collective.
Yeah, sometimes I think, and not everyone is afforded this in terms of time, or
Yeah.
but I think if you can ask yourself, what do I want? And to not guilt what the answer is. Um, I think that's really powerful. Like I my my kids have been sick. I've had I've had sick kids. I've been called in almost every day, um and I've felt behind on work, but then like I realized what I want right now is a walk, or what I want right now is a bath, or like, and
Mhm.
to be able to grant yourself permission to not play into like these desires to optimize, because that's part of a narrative that your body is deficient in some way, or even these desires to like earn more money. I've felt I'm in the midst of book publicity, and I've been thinking like, okay, now I need to build out this coach. Like even like I'm thinking in capitalistic terms because that's the world we live in. Um,
Yeah.
and those aren't none of those things are inherently bad. Like it's not terrible to optimize. Like it's not like the worst thing in the world, but you are getting further and further away from like what your body is telling you you need and want.
Right.
I think if you can give yourself permission to listen to that, obviously I can't always give myself what I want.
Right.
But I think that sometimes I can. So, and
Well, and I think that we struggle with the shame of wanting too
yeah,
much, being too much, and not providing enough, more care, more comfort, more emotional labor
yeah.
that taxes us, right?
Sometimes you um feel guilty that you have any wants or needs at all.
Boom.
Yeah.
And so your head wants to shut those down. We distract, we stay busy, ever learning and never coming to an understanding of the truth.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
how I view that. Because there are people on Substack out, it's the first of the year. They are, how do I optimize for 22 and 6? How do I write more? How do I get more? How do I get? How do I get? And if we understood that the remedy is to rest, not to replicate, that the remedy is to be still, not to get busier, because from that stillness comes that strength, that understanding, that courage that's going to move you beyond human understanding to a place that's already waiting for your optimization if you stop trying to direct it or allow other people to direct it.
Absolutely. I often, when I find myself, chasing all these goals, some of which are great goals, but
Uh-huh.
um, I'll often try to ask myself, what am I afraid of? Like, is fear motivating this thing? Is it passion or fear?
Uh-huh.
Uh, and it could be other things too.
Uh-huh.
Um, but there are certain things that I had on my list that just this past weekend, I was like, I'm taking that off my list because it's motivated by fear. Like, I don't need to add more things and I don't need to complicate my life based upon my unfounded anxieties. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I always tell women is if that chasing, where do you feel like you're too much, that you have to tone it down? Where do you feel like you're not enough, so you have something to prove or something to perform? Those are your two indicators that you're outside your body. Because whenever it comes up, when the opportunity arises, when it says, the Bible says, God gives you the desires of your heart, it's okay to have desires. It's okay to listen to your heart. In fact, God in my world is a feel, not a think. I don't understand my way to God. It's already expressed within. It's like learning a new language, sitting still long enough to learn a new language. If that means you go into God's virtual waiting room for a season of your life, it's uncomfortable, it's boring, it's no doom scrolling, it's all the things. And you come out like Moses, different than when you went in.
Mhm.
And from your place of different is where God most expresses in the collective, I believe.
Yeah, I
So
like that.
so if people, women, especially because we've been so busy coloring inside the lines and performing to be accepted, when you hit midlife, your hormones change, the veil lifts like it does every month when you get accused of PMS, right? For a week, and then the veil goes back down and you go into baby making mode. Well, when you hit menopause or perimenopause, that veil lifts and baby, it ain't not going back.
Oh
And
man.
you still have 30 years left of your life. What are you going to do now?
Yeah.
Well, let's start by stopping
Mhm.
instead of trying to churn through it. What would happen? How would the world be different? How
Mhm.
would your experience be different if this is what led instead of all the chatter?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So good. Told, I'm not quite at 40. I've been told that it is so liberating. Like to the degree I've been promised that I'm going to care even less what people think of me. I've been sharing with some older friends. I'm like, it's amazing to me how much less I care what people think of me having this book out. Like,
Yeah.
and they're like, just wait until you're 40. You're gonna care even less. Like, it's
Right.
like a hormonal promise. Yeah.
It is. And at 50, when you're through that perimenopause place, that, like I said, that veil lifts for real. And uh it is magical. It's magical. And everything after that just keeps getting better. You know, they used to say life begins at 40, and I'm like, no, you don't really reclaim it till you're 50, but boy, then hide and watch. But at 40, the questions change. It causes that shift. And I'm not saying 40 because it's the age, but the hormonal shifts that naturally occur in a woman can start as early as 35 or earlier if they have surgical intervention. And generally take a period of time to finish, to get through. But the clarity on the other side is pretty miraculous. And I love for women who find that voice earlier, good, save yourself 20 years. You
Yeah.
know, good, head start, because that means your children, particularly your daughters, have a 20-year advantage too.
I have often thought I'm so glad I have two boys and then I have a toddler
Yeah.
daughter. And my book is dedicated to my daughter. I signed with my agent and sold my book while I was pregnant with her. So she's not in my book, but it's dedicated to her. And I've often thought like the things that I learned through deconstructing um, so much of feminine scripts and all of that that I learned while writing this book, I'm so glad that I've gone through that process and now I get to raise her. I'm so glad that I don't, I that feels like a privilege to have
Yes.
her be at the end of that rather than me deconstructing while I'm trying to raise her. I feel like I have so much more clarity.
True. And
Now.
so will she. Yeah. This is part of your legacy
I
for
hope so.
sure.
Yeah.
So where do people find your book? Where do they find you?
Yeah. You
Are you?
can Famished on Food, Sex, and Growing Up as a Good Girl at all major booksellers. So Bookshop, Barnes& and Noble, Amazon. And then I am on Substack and Instagram at Anna J. Rollins and then at annajrollins.com.
Oh, wonderful. Anna, do you have any parting thoughts for our guests that maybe we haven't touched on or that you wish they knew?
Hmm.
Go.
I just think this seems like such a wonderful community. Like for you to give space to women who often aren't in spaces where their voices are allowed. I think that thank you for inviting me onto your podcast and just to have this conversation.
Thank you for feeling safe enough to share that. I appreciate that. And I will always follow you on Substack and see what we might do in the future together.
Yeah, I'm so grateful we're connected.